Okay, welcome. I'm going to be doing a very quick demo about how to create a two-color image here using the stamp filter in Photoshop. The goal of this tutorial is to help you visualize how you could create some print-ready artwork that would be really good for screen printing. And so first I want to show you the actual design that I have here. So let's take a look. I'm opening the PSD file. I'm going to have all the folders and files in the link in the description. And if you take a look at the layers here, we've got two folders. And in the first folder, we have what I'm calling color one. Okay. And that's going to be what I would consider the fill color. And in this particular case, I've turned this to blue. But let's go ahead and click on here. And I'm going to turn off the hue saturation for now. So let's imagine we wanted to burn this to a screen. We would actually save this out as a PDF and it would be a black artwork, right, that would get printed onto a transparency. And then that transparency would be burned into the screen and then you could use any ink you want. So I'm just visualizing the blue here, just imagining that I would use blue ink. But what I really need is a nice sharp black and white graphic here. Similarly, with color number one, if I turn off color number two, you can see that we have the same thing. We have that thick, bold line artwork, but I haven't really applied any other color on this because I'm assuming that for my two color screen print, we're going to have a first color is going to be this blue color, and then the second color is going to be black, right? So you can think of it as two layers. First, you're going to print the blue color, let it dry, and then you would print that second color on top of it. Okay. I've also added the text up here just to kind of like, help you visualize what each color is. But obviously, I wouldn't want to print that unless that was part of my design. But in general, my design is going to look like this. This is what we're going for. So a couple of things to start off with, just the basics is, where did I get this image? Well, it's a good idea to use public domain images, and there's lots of places to get public domain images, but my favorite place is rawpixel right now. There's a lot of places, but right now I'm liking rawpixel. So you can create an account. I've created an account with my Google. And then when you go to rawpixel, here you can see that I have done a couple of things. First, I searched the word beetle, right? Just type in the word beetle. And you're going to see some really cool stuff here. But the problem is that you don't know whether or not these are going to be public domain images. In other words, images that are free to use. And so in order to make sure that you have public domain, we're going to click on this filters button here. And oh, of course, it's not. Oh, there it is. You click on public domain, right? And so now that has made the filter on the search for public domain images. So all of these images here are images that you could use without having to worry about any kind of copyright. So you could use them for t-shirts or any commercial work as well as your own design work. And so here you can see, here's this image, right? So if I click on this, this is the original image that we're going to start with. Now, you can notice that it's got that kind of vintage look. It's an illustration probably from the late 1800s or early 1900s, and it's got those soft gray gradients, and it also has that kind of gray or beige background color. That's not going to work for screen printing. You cannot, if you try to burn this to a screen, if it's on transparency, you're going to have really terrible results. So we need to get this to a thick, truly black and white artwork. All right. So a couple of ways I could do this. I could download this, and I have already downloaded it, so it's in the folder that you'll have access to. So you could go ahead and download that. Another sneaky way to do this also would be to do Shift Command 4 on the Mac. There's other ways to do that on the PC, and then just take a screen capture. Okay, that would be another way to do it. Another thing you notice here, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a watermark on here, and so in general, you want to get the version that doesn't have the watermark. Although in this particular case, since we're using the stamp filter, you could probably make the settings so that that watermark wouldn't even matter. But in general, you don't want that watermark. Okay. So let's imagine now I've got this. I've downloaded that image, right? And so I've got it in my folder. I'm just going to open up this folder real quick, and we've got that image downloaded from rawpixel. So there it is. That's it, right? Now, I would want to bring that into Photoshop, right? But first, I want to think about what is the size and scale of what I want to do. And in my particular case, I'm just going to be printing out on an 8.5 by 11 standard letter sized transparency, right? A printable transparency with black ink. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that file size first. So if I go to Photoshop, I'm going to keep this for reference. This PSD file is going to be open there for reference, and we come back to that. But first, I'm just going to go File, New, and in this particular case, I'm going to go over to Print, and I'm going to go to Letter 300 pixels per inch. Okay. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and change this to 150 pixels per inch. Now, 300 is the default for high resolution printing. Now, you can also go up to 600 or even 1200. But in this particular case, just because it's black and white and it's going to be really thick lines and not a lot, not extreme detail, I'm okay with 150 DPI. It's just going to make my file a little bit smaller. So I'm going to maybe rename this. I'll call this Beetle illustration. Okay. And we'll just open this up. So 8.5 by 11, 150 DPI, RGB color, everything's good. We're going to hit create here. So now we have our file here, and we're going to import that file that we downloaded from rawpixel. So I'm going to go to File, Import, Images. Actually, sorry, I'm just going to do, yeah, File, Import. Okay, Images. Darn it. Of course I did this. I don't ever do this. I just open the file and drag it on there. So let's just do that, okay? Um, so let me go in here. I just do this. Boom. Just drag it in, okay? There you go. I just dragged it in. So one of the things to think about here is that this file right now, if we just go ahead and click and place this down, I'm going to click place that down. It automatically comes in as a smart object. So that's okay. That's what we want. Except that we want to trim this down a little bit, right? So actually, I'm going to rasterize this layer. So I'm going to right click and go to rasterize layer. You can also go here to rasterize layer, and it'll become clear why I want to do this in a second. Because once I have that layer rasterized, now I can go ahead and grab my marquee selection tool here, and I'm just going to drag a rectangle around this, and all I'm doing basically is I'm going to crop this out, right? So I've selected around it. I'm on the layer there. I'm going to do select inverse, and then I'm going to do cut. So edit, cut, or just Command X on the keyboard. So go ahead and cut. And so now we have that the beetle kind of, we've taken away all the text and everything. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make it a little bit larger. So I'm grabbing my move tool here, and I'm just going to click and drag, holding down shift to keep it kind of centered. And then when I scale it up, I'm going to make sure I'm holding down option to scale from the center, and then shift to make sure that it does not distort. So you never want to distort this, right? You always want to keep the original proportions. So holding down option and shift keeps the original proportion, option keeps it kind of centered here. So I'm going to get it to a size I kind of like, let go of my right hand, and there I go. I have that image, okay? So I tend to like to keep my layers really well named. So I'm going to rename this layer just by double clicking on it. I'm going to call this original, okay? And then I like to keep that original because you never know if when you're going to need it again. So I will keep that original. And I'm going to make a copy of that by clicking and dragging to the plus icon down at the bottom of that layers menu. So now I've made that copy, okay? And so now here's where we would start to use the stamp filter in order to create that really heavy artwork, right? Now, one thing that's really good about Photoshop is that you can do non-destructive editing by turning this into what's called a smart object. So I'm going to right click on this layer, and I'm going to go to convert to smart object. You can also do that by going to the little hamburger menu up here to convert to smart object. Now, once I do convert to smart object, you'll see it has a little kind of file icon in the bottom right. That lets you know that it's a smart object. What's nice about that is basically the computer is saving it off into its own little file, and so it's non-destructive, and you'll see what I mean by that. So let's go ahead and experiment with this with the stamp filter, especially for this first layer, okay? The first color. One thing about the stamp filter is you have to make sure that the black or whatever you want the color of your stamp to be, in this case black, is set to the foreground of your swatches and white is in the background, okay? Just trust me, that will work better than anything. But, sometimes you might have it switched around, and in that case, it's going to create an inverse. Could be a cool effect, but in this case, we don't want to do that. We just want to stick to the default here with the black in the foreground. Ways that you can change that is there's this little arrow here that allows you to flip, and or you can click over on this left side. There's this little tiny thing on the swatches, and that kind of resets it. Okay, so make sure you have black and white. And now we're going to go up to filter, and we're going to go to the filter gallery. So the filter gallery basically gives you access to all of your filters in Photoshop. So I'm going to click on filter gallery, and it's going to pop it up. Now, I just happen to have the stamp filter already highlighted here, and I've already got it also set to basically the settings I want. So pretty dark, 19 and 8. We'll talk about that in a second. But, when you do this, you might be on a different one, right? You might be on a completely different one. So you need to search through, and you need to go to the sketch menus here, this, and fold that down, and then click on the stamp. Now, when we look here at the sliders here, so light and dark balance, that's pretty self-explanatory. The bigger the number, the darker the image, okay? And we could go all the way. Well, you see at some point it glitches out, but I'm going to go to something like 19 or 20, basically 20, okay? So we've pretty much turned this entire image into the black areas being fully black. Now there are a few highlights. I'm okay with that. Smoothness is kind of like the detail, and you can see that as I move the smooth up, it kind of like can get rid of some funky elements. There was some texture on that background, and now if I move the smoothness up a little bit, it kind of cleans up that texture. It also kind of rounds the edges, so that's kind of helpful too. So I'm okay with that. I'm going to hit OK. So there we go. That's our first layer, right? So that would be the first color of our two-color graphic. Now, another good thing about doing the, um, about using smart objects is that I can just duplicate this layer and then I have the same access to all of those same elements. So if I click and drag this down again, and I'm going to drag it on top of the plus button, and now I have a copy of that, okay? And I can turn off the eyeball for the original copy here. And in order to make sure that we have the naming correct, I'm going to double click and I'm going to call this color 1. So color 1 would be the first color that you print onto the screen, and then color 2 would be the second color that you're going to print. So let's turn off the eyeball for color 1, and then here for color 2, um, I'm going to, now since I already have that filter already applied, and you can see it says it right here, filter gallery. So I don't have to go up to the filter menus. I can just double click on this word filter gallery right here on this smart filters right here. And now I can make an edit. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to pull this kind of all the way back down to where it's kind of just starting to show up. So it looks like 1 is actually fine. That's perfect. Okay. And so notice the difference. We had 19 here, which was very thick, and here we have 1, right? Now 0 completely makes it disappear. We want to have something. But what's nice about this is that you have really thick lines, and that's exactly what we need. When you're printing, um, you want thin lines can be hard to duplicate. It's not always that case, but you're going to give yourself a lot more ability, and you're going to be set up for success if you've got nice, thick, heavy lines for screen printing. So now I'll name this color also. I'm going to call this color 2. So now we could just go ahead and export as PDF or export as JPEG. All right, but I want to do a couple of other little things here. In order to imagine what this might look like, I'm going to go ahead and first we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a color to this. Okay. One way to do this, there's lots of different ways to do this, but one way that I'm going to do this here is I'm going to select that layer, color one, and I'm going to go to Image, Adjustment, Hue Saturation. I like using Hue Saturation. Again, it's non-destructive. So I get this little pop-up here. I'm going to click on the colorize, and then I'm going to change the lightness a little bit, right? And you can see by changing the lightness, you are basically allowing the hue to take over. If you turn the lightness down, we go back to black. Okay, we can even change the background. But in this particular case, we're going to come up, I'm just going to go up to about, I don't know, 40 here on the lightness. And then for the hue, we get to pick a color. Actually, I'm going to go into the blues, and then I'm going to change the saturation and make it quite a bit brighter. Okay. And so that would help to simulate what our blue color is going to look like. Go ahead and hit OK on that. What's really cool about using these smart objects is that you get kind of a gallery down here where you can see all of the effects that you've applied, and they're all non-destructive. So if I turn off the hue, it changes it back. If I turn off the filter gallery, changes it back to the original image. So that's really nice. And then the final detail of how we might be able to visualize this would be, I'm going to go ahead and turn the eyeball on for this color. But right now you see, since it's fully black and white, it's completely obscuring the layer underneath it. So we need to go over to the blending mode here in the layers. So we got the color 2 selected, and I'm going to change it from normal to multiply. Okay. So that little change from normal to multiply gives me, it allows us to see through the white areas. I'm noticing here that maybe I want to make that blue a little bit brighter. So here I'm going to click on the hue saturation, double click on that, and maybe change the brightness a little bit and get that a little bit brighter. Okay, so now we basically are set up to export our files. Okay, the last little detail I would say is I would like to just, for my own kind of like process, I like to add a name or a label to each of the layers. So in this particular case, I'm going to make sure I have the black in the foreground. I'm going to grab the type tool. I'm going to kind of click up here in the center. I've got centered text. I'm going to use the font Courier Bold and 18, but you could use any font you want. And I'm going to click up here, and I'm just going to type in Beetle, and I'm going to call this. Now this is going to be color 2 because it's the top one. And then I'm going to click on that, click on the move tool, and then kind of just get it centered. Now, one thing you'll notice though is that in the type, this text right now has a whole bunch of tracking on it. So I'm going to go to character here. I'm going to pull this out. Let's see. Yeah, the tracking is set to 340, right? So you might have yours might look something more like this. I've just added some tracking. I think I'm going to add just 200 tracking. It kind of makes it look nice. It looks a little bit more artistic, right? So there I have the label for color 2, and then I have the artwork for color 2. And just to keep things really organized, I'm going to click on, and hold down shift and grab those two layers. And I'm going to click and drag onto the folder icon, and I'm going to make, well, it's called a group, but it's the folder icon. It makes a group out of those two layers. And then I'm going to double click on that, rename, and let's call that color 2. Okay. So now if we twirl down that group, you can see those are the layers in that group. Now, in order to get that same label, but to move it for color 1, I'm just going to duplicate that layer. So I go to the Beetle color 2 layer, click and drag onto the plus icon, and now I have a copy of that. I'm going to pull it out of the color 2 group. It's a little bit tricky. Sometimes you have to kind of work with that a little bit to get it out of that group. Make sure you're changing the layer hierarchy, right? So I'm going to turn off the color 1 and I'm sorry, color 2, and turn on color 1. And then in order to edit this text label, I double click on the layer. I'm going to change that 2 to a 1. And now we have the label for our color 1. I'll follow that same process where I select both the layers for the label and the color 1 artwork, drag that onto the folder icon to make a group. And now I have color 1. All right. So we're getting really close to being ready to output this for PDF. Okay. So let me go ahead and let's just go ahead and do that. So if we were to go ahead and export these, let's say I want to export color 1. Now, obviously, I do not want to export with that blue because I just want black and white. So I'm going to turn off the hue and saturation. And now I'm ready to export. Okay. So a couple ways you can do that. I think maybe one of the most simple ways to do this is just to save as. So and first though, I'm just going to go ahead and save as right now. Make sure that I get this in the correct folder. I'm going to put this in the stamp demo folder. Beetle illustration, good. And actually I want to make sure that this is set to Photoshop because this is going to be my official Photoshop version, okay, with the layers. And then if I'm going to go ahead and export to PDF, or save as PDF. Now I'm going to do File, Save As, and then I'm going to call this Beetle Illustration Color 1, but now I'm going to change the format to PDF. All right, and we're going to save it out. So Beetle Illustration Color 1 PDF, save that out. All right, we'll just follow all these things here. That's fine. Just save, save, save. Good. And so now we follow the same process for color 2. Turn off the eyeballs for color 1 and go to color 2. And now we're going to do File Save As. Now we're already a PDF, which is good. We just need to change the name. Beetle Illustration Color 2 PDF. Go ahead and save it there. Hit OK, save, yes, yes. Okay, so let's go back to our folder now and take a look at what we have. So now we have a PDF of color 1 and a PDF of color 2. And so what we would do is take those to our transparency printer, print those out onto transparency, and then we could use those to burn the screen. One final detail is that you notice that I turned it to 150 dpi. So each one of these PDFs, they're still layered files. So they're like 15 or 15, 16 megabytes, which is reasonable. Okay. But you could imagine that if it's a much bigger file, it might be something like 30, 40, 50, or maybe even 100 megabytes. So in that case, what I might do, and I don't need to do this right now, but I could flatten each of the PDF files, right? So let's say I have this color 2 PDF. I could go to, let's see, where's flatten image? So layer, flatten image. I could flatten the whole thing and then save it, and it would be a much smaller file. So that's a way to save files, save space. Okay, so I hope you learned a lot in that, especially about how to use the stamp filter to create artwork for a two-color print in screen printing. And go ahead and check the links below for the demo files. Okay, see you next time.